Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Abe with MysticGenMara.com, and today I thought about introducing you to the belief in the Wheel of the Year. And if you are a old school follower of the old religions, you already know what this is, but if you have not heard of this before, this is how the ancients used to celebrate the passing of time and the passing of the seasons, which to them was a giant wheel that turned. So, let's dive right in here. The holidays of the old calendar were called Sabbats, of the Pagans and the Druids. The older beliefs use these holidays to mark important times of the year, the harvests, the high and low points of the sun, spring and fall, times to plant and butcher or harvest, times that followed the sun and the important agricultural needs of the community. The Sabbats became a way to celebrate these times, thank the gods and goddesses, and the community to come together to plant, harvest, build, or just in general celebrate life. The origins of these 8 holidays are lost to time. From my experience, and through the things that I've studied over the years, there's not an exact time that they showed up as start of the celebrations, but they were documented in the 1600s during a, let's say, darker period of human history as part of the burning times. The Catholic Church at the time was trying to destroy the old gods and goddesses, which has been an ongoing fight with that church. And they used to use the Sabbat celebrations as proof of a demonic influence. And if you knew anything about them, you'll know that that's not true. They couldn't be further from that truth in all reality. The Sabbats were celebrations of life in every and all aspects. There was nothing evil or dark about them. So the original Sabbats and the dates were Samhain, which is the Druid Celtic New Year, which is October 31st. You had Yule on December 21st, Imbolg on February 2nd, Ostara, the spring equinox, March 21st, Beltane on May 1st, MidSummer or Litha on June 21st, which is also the Summer Solstice, Lofnasa or Lammas on August 1st, and Mabon, which is the autumn equinox, in September 21st. The funny part, at least to me, because I have an interesting sense of humor, was that the church was doing, they were just messing up in all reality, because what they were trying to do is get rid of the old holidays by covering those holidays with a Christian version of them. For example, Yule became Christmas, Ostara became Easter, Samhain, they moved into All Souls Day or All Saints Day. And there's other holidays they either poo-pooed and ignored or downplayed until they lost their importance altogether to the communities. And as we developed culturally, we were slowly separated from the agricultural aspects of life, thus reducing the importance of those other Sabbats. But just like the old gods didn't disappear, neither did the old celebrations. They changed, adapted, and became the more modern versions that we celebrate today. Not everybody, celebrates the old holidays, but if you want to get the basics of those 8 holidays, I'm going to go over them, just kind of a quick introduction and when they are, and what some of the origins were. This is not by any means a detailed line of them, but it is a good idea just to see what they offer. So we're going to start with the new year of the pagan wheel of the year, Samhain. It's actually spelled Samhain, but that's not how it's said. This is what we call Halloween. Funny thing is, we celebrate this holiday almost identical to the original celebrations. Obviously, there's some changes. Going door to door for goodies, costumes that were originally used to hide us from the spirit world, because the veil at this time is extremely thin, and so the path to the underworld was pierceable, so the ghosts and spirits of those who passed would come back at this time. And that's when, the spiritual world in general could cross into our world, we could cross into theirs. It was a good idea to wear a costume so that the ghosts wouldn't take you back with them, type of a thing. The old holiday was also the butcher harvest, whereas today we have separated ourselves for the most part from the more bloody aspects of life, and I won't get gory on here, but just making comments, where before, even as recent as 100 years ago, the butchering time was an extremely important time to people because they lived and at some cases would die based upon where they harvested enough and if they had enough meat saved up and butchered for the winter. And this was the time of that butchering. It was the third harvest, which is actually the last harvest of the year. It was also a time to remember anyone who had passed in the last year and to respect your ancestral lines. Because the veil was thin, the ancestors could presumably come through at this time period, and it wasn't uncommon to have the main feast table and then a small table off to the side that was called the silent feast, where there would be food, plates, and chairs, but you didn't acknowledge that. That's where the ancestors would sit. This was also one of the fire festivals from my research, and if you have a different view, that's cool. Bonfires were very, very common at the Samhain celebrations, and in the way back time, this holiday was several days to a full week long. It's been shortened to one day over time, so it's only the October 31st celebration now. But Samhain was when the aging god would descend into the underworld to bring balance to the underworld, to rest and recharge and regain his strength for the return in December. The land is dormant, the goddess is in mourning at the loss of the god, the land itself just seems sad after Samhain. And when you look outside, it really is a quiet time. Things are still, things are reserved. In the northern hemisphere, the snow starts to show up. It's just like a big rest, like you just want to take a nap for this period after the Samhain season. So it really is like the final celebration, the last big hoorah of the year. Which leads us into the holiday of Yule, December 21st, the winter solstice. And this is where we get the concept of Christmas. In lore, Jesus was actually born closer to the spring, around February-ish, not December in the slightest, though. But the ancients believed that the sun god returned from the underworld and was reborn on the night of Yule. This is a time of the days getting longer, the sun's returning to banish the darkness, and a sweet baby was born to save and continue life on this planet. This imagery has carried over to our New Year's baby as well. Yule is the shortest day of the year, and so this is the time of, we're done with winter. It's technically the first day of winter according to our current calendar, but we're done with the darkness and it's starting to get lighter. From the 21st on, the days get longer. Pine trees being decorated is an ancient pagan tradition. Yule logs is an ancient tradition. And gifts being exchanged were all the original holidays celebration practices. Setting long-range intentions and goals is another thing that people would do during this time, because it was a time of rebirth to set those long-stretched intentions, which is probably where we got the New Year's resolution concept, which I don't know about you, but I never follow. So that will lead us into, and this is where it depends on who's writing it, who's reading it, and what tradition you're following. But it's either Imbolg with a G or Imbolc, which is with a C, which is February 2nd. It also has a name, from what I find, it's more recent, within the last 500-600 years, called Candlemass, because the use of candles with holly crowns and wreaths are the signature for this holiday. Although in our more modern culture, Holly, candles, etc. are used at Yule/Christmas. This is a holiday of renewal. The reborn sun god is returning vitality back to the land. Livestock is usually pregnant at this point, if not full in birthing periods. The snow is melting, days are growing longer and longer, everything's warming up, and this is the time when a lot of us will start doing our spring cleaning. Open up your windows, get that stagnant winter air out of the house and let fresh air in. It's basically a time to freshen things up. That's why there's the candles everywhere, because you're trying to bring that sun, that light, the memory of a warmer time back into your life. And from there, we move into the spring or vernal equinox, which is March 21st. And I'm a traditionalist, so those are the dates I stick with. But the ancients would call this Ostara, what the church would call today Easter. Did you ever wonder why bunnies and chicks were a signature of the resurrection of Jesus? They have nothing to do with the Christian holiday whatsoever. But they have everything to do with the older holiday, or the Sabbat, that is underneath being glossed over. This is full-on birthing season. We know we'll be able to survive when the land is going to wake up from winter and its winter healing and the slumber. The goddess is her young maiden state, the virginal young woman, and she's everywhere she goes. Life just springs from her step. The god is the young man, not yet mature in virile sense, but getting stronger every day, really stepping into that solar power that he carries with him as his birthright. Now, we come on to one of the more interesting holidays, in my opinion, which is Beltane. And the reason I say it's interesting, it is the polar opposite of Samhain. It's exactly 6 months apart. It is May 1st. Whereas Samhain is remembering the past, Beltane is bringing in the new life, the joy of life, spreading those wild oats, if you will. This is a time of great fertility. The god has come into his full power. The goddess has matured and is the virgin bride of this night. This time is very much about sensuality, and generally that leads into sexuality as well. Maypoles, bonfires, dancing, drinking, blessings all around. This is a time to bless the herds of animals for health for the next year, to bless plant seeds. It's a time for getting back to nature. It's also a time to honor all of the fertility gods and goddesses, the elements and the fairies. The fairies are the time, this is one of their times, where they like to come through and really, stir things up a bit. And whenever you have the fairies pop up, you have mischief. So Beltane is a lot about having fun and enjoying life in general. There's a few more racy things, but I won't go into those with that holiday, but feel free to check that out because it is, like I said, a very interesting holiday. From there, we move into MidSummer, or Litha, Summer Solstice, June 21st, the longest solar day of the year. The god is at his peak of power. Life is exploding with growth. Where the full moon is the peak of feminine power, and this cycles approximately 12 to 13 times in the course of a year, this is the day of peak masculine energy. The male power is on full display during this time. From my experience, if you were to tap into the energy of MidSummer, of that masculine solar energy, it's the week before June 21st and the week after. Where like the full moon, you have the day of and the day before and the day after. With the solar, it's a week before and a week after, so you have a 2-week window to really get into that solar masculine energy. The protector and provider for all of his children, that is his role at this time. The goddess is in full mother mode, so she's herding and guiding children and teaching. Life is flourishing under their combined power. But, as things do, from here on, the days are going to get shorter, and the power of the Lord begins to wane, and as his power wanes, the lady actually will start to weep and mourn, and so her energy will start to drain as well away from the world. This is the other day, I should say, when the fairy realm is readily accessible, so be aware of mischief during this time. Now we're moving into, this is actually if you were to talk in a normal conversation about this particular holiday, I can guarantee you that the person you're talking to is going to look at you funny. This is a forgotten holiday. It's the first harvest. It's called Lammas or Lofnasa. And I probably said the last one wrong, but it's named after an ancient god of Luf. This is the first of the 3 harvests, I should say. This is the grain harvest. It's the first indication that the Lord is following his destiny and getting ready to lay down his life for the land and people. This is, in some cultures or some beliefs, this is actually when the solar god dies and goes into the underworld to kind of prepare for the lady to follow him at a later time, and then they both go into the underworld on Samhain to pop back up on Yule. So it depends on which tradition you follow, but it's what you choose at this point. As far as I'm concerned, I see this one as a stepping down of the Lord from his full power and the lady stepping up, having to basically cover everything because he's passing away. And from Lofnasa, we move into Mabon, which is the autumn equinox, which is September 21st. This is the second harvest, the end of the growing season for most of the plants. The energy of the Lord and Lady are really pulling away from the land at this time. The days are getting noticeably shorter. The harvest is of fruits and most of the vegetables. Fermented cider, fruit wines are most of the time what you would have during this experience. You'd probably have some of the grain that you harvested earlier in different breads and pastry type stuff. This is generally considered what we would call a pagan Thanksgiving, as it's one of the biggest harvests, if not the biggest of the 3, because it's really the end of the crops for most everything. During the Samhain season, you're going to be harvesting squash and root crops like carrots and potatoes and stuff. But this one is when most of the time you would harvest everything else. So this was a really big time for harvesting and preservation and being thankful for the bounty that you have received that will get you through the winter to the next spring. And from Mabon, we move back into Samhain, which is the final harvest, root crops and butchering and things like that for the winter meat. As the wheels turn, times change, seasons move, but the blessings of all of this are the Lord and the Lady remain constant. No matter what else is going on, the love of Spirit, Source, Divine Energy is always blessing us, and we use the Wheel of the Year as a way to say thank you and to remind ourselves that we really are a part of this bigger connection. We really are a part of the world in which we live in a greater way than just you born, you live, you die, that's it. The way the Wheel of the Year is really played out is a life drama in a 1-year period. It shows all of those parts from birth to death, what happens after death, and it lets us see that there's a bigger plan and there's more to life than what we originally thought. So, I hope you got something out of this today. I'm enjoying bringing these forward for you guys. So, thank you for showing up. Like if you like the content. Subscribe. If you have suggestions, please comment below. Just be respectful about it. And I will see you in the next video.